The night was supposed to be glamorous, a sparkling celebration of Hollywood's finest. Red carpets, flashing cameras, glittering gowns, and tuxedos as far as the eye could see. Every detail meticulously planned, every celebrity strategically placed. But nothing, not the photographers, not the velvet ropes, not even the security guards, could have prepared anyone for what would happen when Meghan Markle arrived at the 2025 Governor Awards. Because this night, meant for applause and admiration, would quickly spiral into chaos, scandal, and an unforgettable confrontation that would dominate headlines for weeks to come. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Have you ever wondered what it's like when the most polished, controlled world of Hollywood collides with raw human emotion? When the rehearsed smiles crack, and anger, jealousy, and frustration finally escape the perfectly curated facades. That is exactly what happened that evening. And at the center of it all was Meghan Markle, walking onto the red carpet with the poise of a duchess and the confidence of a seasoned actress. But unknown to her, two of Hollywood's biggest icons, Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Cruise, had already reached the limits of their patience, and they were not prepared to let her presence go unnoticed. Imagine this: Leonardo DiCaprio, calm yet formidable, scanning the crowd with the practiced eye of someone who's navigated decades of fame. Tom Cruise, electrifying energy barely contained, moving through the room with intensity and purpose. And then there's Meghan, smiling, elegant, radiating charisma, completely unaware of the storm quietly brewing in the corners of the room. The stage was set, the audience was watching, and no one could have predicted the explosive interaction that was about to unfold. But let's pause for a moment. Why does this story matter so much? Hollywood is no stranger to drama. Millions of headlines, countless controversies. Yet this isn't just another celebrity spat. This moment encapsulates everything about fame, power, and control. It's about boundaries, respect, and the fragile veneer of civility in the most elite social circles. And when two legends confront someone in public, their reputations, her reputation, and the entire narrative of the evening are irreversibly affected. The ripples from this single night would travel far beyond the Governor Awards ballroom, reaching gossip columns, tabloids, social media feeds, and the whispered conversations of A-list insiders. From the moment Meghan arrived, there were whispers, subtle comments, sidelong glances, murmurs that only insiders would catch. Some sources claim Leonardo's jaw tightened as she approached. Others report Tom's shoulders stiffening, a visible tension that had nothing to do with the awards themselves. Was it personal, professional, or a mix of both? That tension, almost imperceptible at first, would soon erupt into something no one in the room could ignore. And while cameras captured the glitz and glamour of the event, what they couldn't fully capture was the silent storm building backstage, among the hallways, the green rooms, and the corridors where Hollywood's most powerful quietly plotted their next moves. Have you ever been in a room where the energy changes in a second? One moment calm, the next electric? That's exactly how it felt in the Governor Awards ballroom that evening. Observers say you could almost feel the atmosphere shift as Meghan made her way through the crowd, greeting familiar faces and exchanging pleasantries. But beneath the polite smiles and courteous nods, there was something else, a palpable tension that no one could quite place. People who had attended dozens of awards shows remarked that this felt different, charged, almost dangerous. And indeed, it was. By the time Meghan reached the center of the red carpet, Leonardo and Tom were already discussing her presence in hushed tones, their voices low but firm, carrying the weight of experience and authority. What exactly was said in those moments remains partially shrouded in secrecy, but what followed was anything but quiet. Shouts, pointed gestures, and raised voices cut through the background hum of conversation. A confrontation that should have remained private was now unfolding under the unblinking gaze of photographers, reporters, and the curious eyes of Hollywood royalty. And just like that, a night designed for celebration turned into a spectacle of tension, drama, and unexpected conflict. Yet here's the twist. While it may seem like a sudden outburst, the roots of this confrontation stretch far deeper. It wasn't just a single event or a spontaneous reaction. There were histories, subtle grudges, professional jealousies, and old rivalries intertwined. This is what makes the story so compelling. Because to truly understand what happened, you have to trace the threads that led to this night. Past award shows, private disagreements, leaked comments, insider reports, and Hollywood's complex ecosystem of power dynamics. And as we peel back each layer, the picture becomes more shocking, more intricate, more explosive, and more revealing than anyone could have imagined when the champagne corks first popped. Now, let's talk about Meghan herself. Her presence at the Governor Awards was not just a casual appearance. She had every reason to expect recognition, respect, and admiration. But the Hollywood ecosystem is a tricky one. Fame can be fleeting, and alliances can be fragile. How did two men, respected, celebrated, and feared in their own rights, come to the point of confrontation? And why Meghan, of all people, became the target of such overt frustration? These are the questions that captivated the attendees, dominated social media chatter, and would eventually fuel one of the most talked-about moments of 2025. By the end of the night, the story wouldn't just be about what was said. It would be about what it revealed. The hidden tensions, the silent calculations, the fragile egos, and the human moments behind Hollywood's polished surface. Every glance, every gesture, every whispered word suddenly had meaning. Observers couldn't stop analyzing the interactions, piecing together the narrative, and wondering who truly came out on top. And as the cameras continued to flash, capturing the glitter and glamour, the real story unfolded quietly. In expressions, reactions, and the subtle maneuvers that only insiders would fully understand. And yet, even as the evening drew to a close, the fallout had only just begun. Reports, videos, and insider accounts would emerge, each adding new layers of drama. What seemed like a simple awards night escalated into a public spectacle that tested relationships, reputations, and careers. And for the audience, this was just the beginning. Because what came next? The private conversations, the leaked messages, the behind-the-scenes maneuvering would change everything. The Governor Awards 2025 would not be remembered for the trophies handed out, but for a confrontation that exposed the very heart of Hollywood tension, power, and celebrity conflict. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever walked into a room where every eye seems to be on you, where whispers follow your every step, and every movement is under scrutiny? That was the reality for Meghan Markle as she approached the Governor Awards 2025 red carpet. From the very first moment she appeared, the air seemed to shift, a subtle charge that only those attuned to Hollywood's rhythms could feel. Cameras flashed, and flashes bounced off sequined gowns and polished tuxedos, yet nothing could compete with the tension that quietly hung in the air. The red carpet itself was a spectacle. Ropes cordoned off eager fans and press alike, lining the long pathway that led to the venue. Paparazzi were positioned strategically, snapping shots with a practiced rhythm, calling out names, and chasing every reaction. There was the usual choreography of Hollywood arrivals. A quick smile here, a turn for the camera there, a few waves, and polite nods exchanged. But even in this meticulously planned environment, something felt off. Observers later said they could sense the subtle undercurrent of unease, almost like a storm approaching on the horizon. The glitter and glamour masked it, but it was unmistakably there. Leaning slightly forward to get a better view, Leonardo DiCaprio scanned the scene with that familiar intensity. To anyone who didn't know him, he might have appeared calm, almost detached. But insiders say that every detail was being processed. Every person who walked past him, every conversation he overheard, every gesture and glance, all cataloged in his mind. To Leonardo, appearances mattered, but so did boundaries. And when Meghan Markle appeared on the carpet, she carried herself with undeniable confidence. Elegant, poised, flawless. Yet, there was something that immediately caught his attention. Something that prompted a tight jaw, a subtle shift in posture, a silent, almost imperceptible edge. Tom Cruise, meanwhile, was moving with a very different energy. Electric, intense, and almost kinetic. His eyes scanned the crowd, not missing a single interaction. Unlike Leonardo, whose tension was quiet and contained, Tom's presence carried with it an almost palpable charge. He wasn't just observing. He was measuring, calculating, anticipating. Those closest to him later described the atmosphere around Tom as magnetic, but on the edge of volatility. And in Hollywood, where image is everything, this kind of tension doesn't stay hidden for long. Meanwhile, Meghan, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing nearby, approached the center of the red carpet. She smiled, waved, and engaged with photographers, answering questions with her characteristic charm. Onlookers were struck by her poise, the kind that comes from experience, from a life in the public eye. And yet, in the midst of smiles and cameras, subtle signs of disruption were emerging. A photographer caught a brief frown from Leonardo as he watched her greet another celebrity. Tom shifted slightly, voice lowered in a conversation that seemed almost too sharp for a celebratory evening. And the room, already tense, became acutely aware that something was unfolding that was not part of the scripted event. Consider for a moment the psychology of celebrity interactions in high-profile events. Every glance carries meaning. Every nod, every hand movement, every micro-expression can be interpreted, misinterpreted, or weaponized. And on this particular night, the stakes were higher than usual. Meghan wasn't just another attendee. She was someone whose presence, reputation, and history made her a lightning rod in Hollywood circles. A misstep, real or perceived, could ignite whispers, leaks, and headlines within hours. That's exactly what happened. As she moved along the red carpet, insiders report a quiet tension building among other celebrities as well. Some whispered behind hands, eyes darting between Meghan and the two men who seemed increasingly aware of her presence. A few photographers noticed the subtle shift and instinctively zeroed in, sensing the drama that was about to become public. The energy was almost tangible, a mixture of anticipation, anxiety, and curiosity. And for anyone in that room, even the most seasoned PR handlers, the moment felt precarious. It's important to note the context here. Leonardo and Tom are not just celebrities. They are symbols of Hollywood power. Leonardo, with decades of film acclaim, environmental activism, and a carefully curated public persona, holds influence not just on screen but behind the scenes. Tom Cruise, equally iconic, embodies relentless drive, intensity, and a perfectionism that borders on legendary. And Meghan, a former actress turned global personality, carries her own weight, a combination of charm, controversy, and public fascination. When these worlds intersect in a confined, highly visible space like the Governor Awards red carpet, the potential for conflict is enormous. It was, as many insiders would later say, a collision waiting to happen. The crowd, oblivious to the full depth of these undercurrents, cheered, clapped, and posed for pictures. Yet, keen observers noticed subtle signs of strain. Leonardo's subtle frown, Tom's quickened pace, Meghan's brief, almost imperceptible glance over her shoulder. These were not dramatic gestures. They were micro-expressions that hinted at the tension escalating behind the glitter. And those who picked up on them sensed that the carefully orchestrated event was about to unravel in a way that no one could have scripted. What happened next took everyone by surprise. As Meghan approached a particularly crowded section of the red carpet, a whispered exchange between Leonardo and Tom was reportedly overheard by an insider. The words were low, measured, but carried unmistakable weight, a warning, a signal, a line being drawn. And while the crowd continued to cheer and cameras continued to flash, the subtle choreography of Hollywood politeness began to fracture. What started as tension in the air became noticeable in gestures, a sharper nod, a sudden step closer, a tightened jaw. Every movement now carried meaning. Every interaction was layered with intent. Meanwhile, Meghan continued her procession, unaware of the silent storm gathering just steps away. She greeted colleagues and friends, smiled for photographs, and maintained the grace expected of someone in her position. Yet, the atmosphere around her had changed. The invisible lines that define Hollywood etiquette, the unspoken codes of conduct, were being tested. And in a room filled with cameras, reporters, and gossip-hungry fans, even the smallest deviation could become magnified beyond measure. Observers would later recount a moment when Meghan, perhaps sensing the subtle tension, paused briefly. A fleeting look of awareness crossed her face, a recognition that all was not as it seemed. But before she could react further, The red carpet's choreography forced her forward, propelling her toward the center stage. And it was here, in this carefully controlled environment, that the first sparks of confrontation ignited. Subtle, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, yet undeniable in hindsight. A tightening of shoulders, a quick glance exchanged, a word muttered under breath that carried the weight of authority and impatience. And just like that, the red carpet, meant to celebrate glamour, fame, and achievement, had become a stage for a conflict no one was expecting. The cameras captured the smiles, the elegance, the flashbulbs. But beneath it all, the tension was mounting, coiling like a spring ready to snap. Every attendee, from seasoned actors to young hopefuls, could feel it. And as Meghan continued her path, oblivious to some, aware to others, the first chapter of this unfolding drama was already being written, one glance, one gesture, one whispered word at a time. And yet, for all the public spectacle, the most consequential moments were happening quietly, in side conversations, in subtle exchanges that would only become fully clear later. What was said in the corners, out of the lens's reach, would later emerge as the catalyst for the confrontation that would define the evening. The red carpet had become more than a path to the entrance. It was now a prelude to a confrontation that would shake Hollywood's carefully maintained equilibrium. The question, now, for anyone watching or imagining this scene, could it have been avoided? Were there warning signs? Or was this tension inevitable, a product of history, personalities, and unspoken rules clashing in a moment of visibility? The answers, as we will uncover, are far more complicated than they appear. Because in Hollywood, appearances are deceiving, intentions are layered, and a single moment can redefine perceptions forever. And as Meghan finally approached the main entrance, ready to step inside the Governor Awards, the subtle storm that had been brewing on the red carpet was about to explode. The two men, Leonardo and Tom, would soon take action, publicly, visibly, unmistakably, and what they said and did next would shock everyone in attendance and leave the world talking for weeks to come. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the drama was about to erupt in ways no one could have predicted. But what happened when the confrontation finally occurred? What words were exchanged? What gestures made? Would change the night forever, and it was only the beginning. Have you ever wondered what really happens behind the velvet ropes, away from flashing cameras and eager fans? The red carpet is just the surface, a polished, glittering stage for the public eye. What happens backstage, in the private corridors, green rooms, and secluded lounges, is where the real stories unfold. And for the Governor Awards 2025, the backstage was electric, tense, and quietly explosive. It was here, away from the lens, that whispers began to circulate, rumors took shape, and Hollywood insiders watched a drama in motion that no one was fully prepared for. As Meghan Markle disappeared through the entrance, escorted by event staff, the air backstage thickened. The rooms were lined with mirrors, tables covered in champagne flutes, trays of hors d'oeuvres, and small groups of celebrities and assistants whispering to one another. The hum of quiet conversations was punctuated by occasional laughter, but beneath it all, tension simmered. Those closest to Leonardo DiCaprio noticed subtle signs, a deepening frown, fingers drumming on a table, eyes flicking toward the direction Meghan had gone. Tom Cruise, equally attuned to the dynamics of the evening, paced briefly in a nearby corridor, phone in hand, exchanging low-volume messages that would later become key pieces of insider accounts. It's easy to think that Hollywood drama is always public, displayed for the world in carefully curated Instagram posts or viral video clips. But the truth is, the most consequential moments often happen in private. And on this night, the backstage corridors were alive with that quiet intensity. Sources would later report that several assistants and coordinators were whispering urgently, noticing the unusual tension between the stars. "Something's about to happen," one anonymous staffer recalled. You could feel it in the air. Everyone stopped talking for a moment when Leonardo and Tom exchanged that look. Rumors started to circulate almost immediately, fueled by those who were closest to the scene. The first whispers suggested that Meghan had unknowingly overstepped a boundary, perhaps in greeting a fellow actor in a way that was perceived as a slight. Others suggested that Leonardo's agitation was rooted in past frustrations. A combination of professional rivalries and unspoken personal judgments that had built up over years. Tom's involvement, sources said, was equally layered. A combination of loyalty to his peers, his own intense sense of order, and a desire to assert boundaries that he felt had been breached. Meanwhile, Meghan was escorted to her own private area, a luxurious backstage room designed for comfort and privacy. Mirrors lined the walls, reflecting the glittering dresses and tailored tuxedos from the public space outside. Yet, even in this carefully controlled environment, Meghan could sense the undercurrents of tension. Staffers whispered about subtle movements, glances exchanged, and interactions she may not have even noticed. Questions formed in her mind. Who was upset? Why now? Could this be avoided? But even as she pondered these questions, the machinery of the evening continued to move. She had rehearsed, prepared, and expected to navigate these social waters with grace, but nothing could have fully prepared her for what was happening backstage. The corridors connecting the main stage to the green rooms were narrow, lined with velvet drapes that muffled some sound but carried whispers perfectly. It was here that Leonardo and Tom had their first true private exchange, voices low but deliberate. Those nearby caught fragments. Words like boundary, not acceptable, and this cannot continue. The precise content was debated later, but everyone who heard it agreed on the tone. Firm, controlled, unmistakably serious. It wasn't just a casual remark, it was a statement. And in the quiet backstage environment, every staff member, assistant, and fellow celebrity nearby felt it. What makes backstage rumors so compelling is that they often contain elements of both truth and speculation. One insider, for example, suggested that Leonardo had been frustrated by a pattern of behavior he perceived as manipulative or attention-seeking. Another claimed that Tom's intensity was provoked by concerns about professional optics, that any perceived slight toward him or his colleagues could have long-term consequences in Hollywood's tight-knit circles. And then there were those who believed it was simply a clash of personalities, magnified by the stress of a high-profile awards night. All perspectives converge here. The result was tension, quiet but undeniable, and the sense that something dramatic was about to unfold. As the evening progressed, the whispers became more structured, almost like a ripple effect. A coordinator mentioned overhearing Leonardo and Tom referencing past events, moments in award shows, film sets, and charity galas, where similar conflicts had arisen. Meghan, according to a source, was initially unaware of the specifics. She had experienced celebrity scrutiny before, of course, but the combination of these two Hollywood titans focusing their attention on her, even in private, was a rare phenomenon. Those who witnessed the interactions noted the contrast, her composure and grace against their controlled intensity, the silent struggle to navigate an invisible social minefield. Interestingly, other celebrities began to pick up on the tension as well. Some discreetly tried to intervene, offering smiles, comments, or even strategic distractions. But Hollywood etiquette is a delicate dance. Interfering too much could backfire. So, most watched quietly, sensing that any misstep could have repercussions. The air backstage became almost suffocating, a mix of curiosity, anxiety, and anticipation. Staffers later admitted to feeling nervous, unsure whether the tension would explode into an audible confrontation or remain a simmering undercurrent. And in this environment, every gesture, a glance, a pause, a subtle shift in posture, carried weight. One particular moment stands out in later accounts. A photographer, stationed near a backstage doorway, captured a fleeting but telling glance exchanged between Leonardo and Meghan. To the untrained eye, it could have been dismissed as a standard polite acknowledgement, but insiders suggest that it was anything but casual. It contained the tension of unspoken judgment, a silent assertion of boundaries, and perhaps even an unarticulated warning. Meanwhile, Tom, slightly off to the side, appeared to monitor the interaction with an almost predatory awareness, measuring tone, expression, and stance. Each movement added layers to the story, layers that would later be dissected in media analyses and social media debates. Backstage, rumors didn't remain static. They evolved as new information. or interpretations of existing information emerged. A whispered account from one assistant suggested that Leonardo had commented on a previous awards show incident involving Meghan, framing the confrontation as not merely about tonight, but about a pattern of behavior. Another whispered account claimed that Tom had privately contacted mutual friends to verify certain details, trying to assess whether his perception matched reality. And then there were contradictory stories. One insider said Meghan remained entirely composed. Another suggested she was quietly frustrated, and a third hinted at subtle maneuvers intended to defuse the situation before it escalated. This combination of uncertainty, observation, and rumor created a perfect storm. Those backstage were both witnesses and participants, consciously or unconsciously influencing the unfolding drama. It's one of the quirks of Hollywood events. The backstage environment is simultaneously private and hypervisible. Every movement is noted, interpreted, and often exaggerated in hindsight. And for Meghan, Leonardo, and Tom, this meant that every gesture had implications far beyond the room in which it occurred. Yet the most fascinating aspect of the backstage rumors wasn't just the speculation. It was the psychological tension. Each individual was aware that a public incident could erupt at any second. Every word, every action had to be measured, and for some, the thrill of anticipation added a perverse sense of excitement, a feeling that they were witnessing history in the making. Staffers would later admit that the room felt like a pressure cooker, with energy crackling just beneath the surface. Even those accustomed to high-pressure Hollywood events said this night felt different. The rumors, though, weren't simply gossip. They contained seeds of truth, glimpses of motivation, and hints of intention. Leonardo and Tom weren't reacting purely on impulse. They were responding to perceived slights, professional boundaries, and personal principles. Meghan wasn't oblivious, but she had to balance awareness with grace, ensuring that any reaction wouldn't escalate tensions further. And as observers in the room would later reflect, the combination of history, personality, and circumstance created a volatile environment. One that could have led to a simple misunderstanding or a full-blown confrontation at any moment. And indeed, the moment approached. As Meghan prepared to move from the green room to the main stage area, insiders noted a flurry of whispered coordination. Staffers positioned themselves, subtly guiding paths, ensuring that interactions remained measured. But the tension had already become almost tangible. Every step Meghan took was observed, every glance from Leonardo and Tom carefully interpreted. Rumors that had started quietly backstage were now approaching a tipping point. And just as the stage for the evening opened, the first audible signs of conflict began to emerge. Voices that would soon be captured on video, gestures that would become memes, and a public spectacle that no one could have fully anticipated. The question now becomes, when do backstage whispers cross the line into public drama? In this case, that line was imminent. The combination of personality, reputation, and high-stakes context meant that the rumors weren't just idle chatter. They were the prelude to an interaction that would shock attendees, dominate headlines, and redefine how we understand boundaries, respect, and tension among Hollywood's elite. And it all began with whispers. Quiet, almost imperceptible exchanges that carried the weight of history, intention, and unspoken rules. But when the first words were finally spoken, the private tension erupted into a confrontation that would leave the Governor Awards 2025 forever marked in Hollywood memory. And it was only just beginning. What happens when a simmering tension, carefully cultivated behind the scenes, finally erupts in plain sight? That was the question on everyone's minds at the Governor Awards 2025, the moment Meghan Markle stepped closer to the center of the room. Up to this point, the energy had been almost imperceptibly charged. Whispered warnings, subtle glances, hushed conversations. The backstage rumor mill in full swing. But now, the undercurrent of anticipation became impossible to ignore, and the calm of the awards' glittering stage gave way to a moment that would be seared into Hollywood history. It began with a single, sharp exchange. Sources later described it as brief, almost casual, a comment, a tone, a word, yet it carried the weight of decades of accumulated scrutiny, rivalry, and unspoken judgment. Leonardo DiCaprio, ever the observer, had already positioned himself strategically, his gaze fixed on Meghan, reading her every micro-expression. Tom Cruise, a few steps away, seemed to mirror that focus, his intensity almost tangible. And Meghan, with a blend of elegance and poise, was moving forward, smiling, exchanging polite nods with other attendees, seemingly unaware that the tension that had been quietly building was about to explode. Have you ever experienced a moment where the air changes, the room becomes charged, and you can feel a shift that is impossible to ignore? That was exactly how it felt for everyone present. Observers later remarked that even in the midst of flashing cameras, sparkling gowns, and laughter, there was a palpable electricity, a sense that something extraordinary, something unprecedented, was about to unfold. And indeed, it did. The first audible sign came as Leonardo's voice broke the quiet hum of conversation, firm but not overly loud. He addressed Meghan directly, a remark, carefully measured, that drew immediate attention. It wasn't harsh, but it carried authority. Tom immediately reinforced the point, adding weight with his own tone, decisive, assertive, and unmistakably serious. The combination of the two men speaking in tandem, both widely respected and admired, created an unspoken ultimatum. Boundaries had been crossed, and action was required. For Meghan, the moment was surreal. She had navigated countless red carpets, award ceremonies, and public events, but this was unlike anything she had encountered before. Two of Hollywood's most powerful figures, suddenly and publicly, were confronting her, not politely, not diplomatically, but in a way that demanded acknowledgement. Witnesses later said her initial reaction was a careful, controlled smile, maintaining poise while assessing the situation. Behind the composed exterior, however, questions swirled. Why now? What had triggered this? How could this confrontation be defused without escalation? The crowd, both near and far, sensed the tension instantly. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing moments that would later become viral. The subtle drama of whispered backstage rumors had transformed into something unmistakably real. Laughter faltered, conversations paused, and even the most seasoned Hollywood observers leaned in, trying to discern the underlying dynamics. And as Meghan's measured composure contrasted with Leonardo's intensity and Tom's kinetic energy, the stage was set for a confrontation that combined power, pride, and personality in a way rarely seen in public. Sources later provided conflicting accounts of the precise words exchanged. Some claimed Leonardo had issued a warning regarding boundaries and respect, emphasizing the importance of decorum in a professional and public setting. Others suggested Tom's comments were more about accountability, insisting that behavior previously tolerated would no longer be overlooked. Whatever the exact phrasing, the effect was undeniable. Meghan was confronted publicly, firmly, and in a manner that left the room holding its collective breath. Now, consider the psychological dynamics at play. Public confrontations are rarely just about the words spoken. Body language, tone, timing, and environment all shape perception. Leonardo's posture, calm, measured, yet unyielding, sent a signal of controlled authority. Tom's movements, decisive, almost predatory in focus, underscored the seriousness of the moment. Meghan's response, composed, slightly measured, maintaining eye contact without aggression, reflected both experience and strategic awareness. Every observer, from journalists to fellow celebrities, noted the intricate dance, a collision of personalities, reputation, and power, unfolding in real time. And yet, there was a twist. While the confrontation was serious, it was also layered with irony, subtle humor, and complexity. Those closest to the scene later described moments where Meghan's wit diffused tension briefly, where Leonardo's restrained sarcasm emerged, and where Tom's intensity contrasted sharply with the almost casual elegance of the setting. These contradictions, firmness paired with poise, tension mixed with humor, made the interaction mesmerizing. Everyone watching, whether in person or through the lens of a camera, felt the drama, the stakes, and the unpredictability. It's important to remember that public confrontations of this magnitude are never spontaneous. They are the culmination of history, prior incidents, and perceived patterns of behavior. Insiders would later reveal that both Leonardo and Tom had been aware of Meghan's previous interactions with other Hollywood elites, incidents that may have contributed to their decision to speak up. What appeared sudden was, in fact, the inevitable result of carefully calculated responses to past events. And Meghan, who had long been adept at navigating public scrutiny, suddenly found herself at the center of a perfectly orchestrated collision of personalities. Then came the moment captured on video, a fleeting, almost imperceptible movement, but one that would dominate social media analysis for weeks. Leonardo raised a hand slightly, signaling something to Meghan, perhaps a request, perhaps a boundary, perhaps an admonishment. Tom mirrored the gesture in his own way, reinforcing the message. Observers later noted the synchronicity, two powerful figures communicating a message with precision, clarity, and authority. For Meghan, the gesture was unmistakable. She was being asked to recognize limits, to respond appropriately, and to navigate the situation carefully. The emotional intensity of the moment cannot be overstated. While the words themselves were not harsh, the room felt charged, heavy with anticipation, curiosity, and anxiety. Staffers later recounted a sense of near panic, unsure whether the confrontation would escalate further or resolve quietly. Photographers, still clicking away, captured a series of expressions: surprise, poise, defiance, concentration. And for the audience, both live and later online, the drama unfolded in real time, blurring the lines between celebrity spectacle and raw human conflict. One remarkable aspect of the confrontation was Meghan's composure. Sources emphasized that despite the public nature of the exchange, she maintained a level of elegance that contrasted with the intensity of Leonardo and Tom. Her voice, calm but firm, responded to their comments without aggression, showing both awareness and tactical acumen. This interplay, her poised responses against their commanding presence, created a tension that was both captivating and instructive. It was a masterclass in navigating high-stakes social dynamics, captured against the backdrop of Hollywood glamour. And yet, the confrontation was not fully contained to the public eye. Insiders later revealed a series of whispered exchanges, subtle side comments, and strategic gestures that occurred simultaneously, just beyond the camera frame. These hidden interactions added layers to the story, the attempt to negotiate, to assert boundaries, and to influence perception, all while maintaining composure in front of the media. It was these subtleties, later revealed through leaked accounts and private messages, that transformed the encounter from a simple public admonishment into a multi-dimensional drama, rich with psychology, strategy, and emotional stakes. Then came the culmination. A single phrase, reportedly spoken by Leonardo, carried the authority and gravity that marked the turning point of the confrontation. Tom's reinforcement, a deliberate, controlled assertion, underscored the seriousness of the moment. Meghan, responding with a carefully measured remark, subtly acknowledged the point while maintaining dignity. The room, silent, captivated, and tense, collectively processed the unfolding drama. Every observer recognized that they were witnessing more than a minor disagreement. They were watching a rare moment of high-stakes social navigation among Hollywood's elite, with implications that would ripple far beyond that evening. Who was really watching when the confrontation unfolded? You might assume the cameras captured everything: the flashes, the smiles, the gestures. But in a room full of Hollywood's elite, the silent observers often become the most important storytellers. Celebrities, assistants, stylists, and insiders were all present, and their reactions, subtle, telling, and sometimes explosive, would later provide context, insight, and even controversy. What they saw and how they interpreted it would define public perception and give us a rare glimpse into the social dynamics of an A-list world. Some witnesses later described the moment as electric, a charged pause where everyone seemed to collectively hold their breath. Stars who were accustomed to walking red carpets, attending glamorous award ceremonies, and navigating delicate social hierarchies felt something different that night. It wasn't just Meghan, Leonardo, and Tom in the room. It was the combination of personal history, status, and carefully managed reputations, all colliding in real time. One insider commented, "You could almost hear the tension. Everyone knew something was happening, even if they didn't know exactly what. Multiple accounts emerged about how individual celebrities reacted. Some reportedly tried to defuse tension with casual conversation or polite distractions. Others, sensing the seriousness of the confrontation, stepped back, observing quietly, unwilling to interfere. There were whispered reassurances, subtle hand gestures, and even tiny smirks that betrayed amusement or incredulity. Every action, no matter how minor, was noted and internalized by everyone present. Observers later reflected on the complexity of reading these interactions in real time, emphasizing how layered and subtle Hollywood's social navigation can be. Direct witnesses offered shocking insights into Meghan's composure. According to some, she maintained an almost diplomatic calm throughout the confrontation, carefully balancing assertiveness with grace. One assistant described it as masterful tension management, noting that Meghan responded with precision, choosing her words and gestures deliberately to avoid escalation. At the same time, sources claim that Leonardo and Tom's body language, authoritative, sharp, and unyielding, subtly reinforced their stance, creating a dynamic interplay that heightened the tension for everyone in the room. But here's the twist. Not all witnesses agreed on what they saw. Hollywood insiders are notoriously subjective, and what one perceives as a subtle rebuke, another might interpret as a playful jab or miscommunication. Some celebrities later suggested that Leonardo's tone was firm but fair, a measured attempt to set boundaries. Others claimed it was bordering on aggressive. Tom's involvement, according to differing accounts, ranged from protective and principled to confrontational and intense. These contradictions only added to the fascination, creating a narrative that the public would dissect endlessly on social media and entertainment outlets. Some witnesses focused on micro-details that would later become viral talking points. For example, a subtle raise of Leonardo's eyebrow, a tilt of Tom's head, or a momentary narrowing of Meghan's eyes. Each gesture, though brief, carried layers of interpretation. Fans and analysts pored over photos and video clips frame by frame, attempting to decode hidden meanings and motivations. Was Leonardo frustrated with Meghan personally, professionally, or strategically? Was Tom trying to assert dominance, protect reputation, or merely mediate decorum? Each interpretation sparked debate, fueling the story far beyond the room itself. Other celebrities present reportedly provided their own insights privately. Some reached out to journalists, giving accounts that conflicted with one another, each colored by personal relationships, past rivalries, or even loyalty to one of the parties involved. The result was a mosaic of perspectives, each contributing to the narrative while leaving key pieces deliberately ambiguous. This interplay between perception and reality is what makes Hollywood confrontations so compelling. What actually happened can sometimes matter less than how it is interpreted, recounted, and amplified. One particularly intriguing aspect of the witnesses' accounts was the emotional resonance of the moment. Many described feeling a mix of awe, shock, and fascination. Even those who had attended dozens of award shows remarked on the uniqueness of this situation. They noted the combination of celebrity power, public exposure, and raw emotion, all occurring simultaneously. There was admiration for Meghan's poise, respect for Leonardo's control, and curiosity about Tom's intensity. It was a moment that captured the complexity of human interaction under extreme public scrutiny, a rare, unfiltered glimpse of Hollywood's social ecosystem. Direct audience questions emerge naturally here. What would you do if placed in that room? How would you respond to two of Hollywood's biggest stars confronting you in public? Could you maintain composure while under intense scrutiny, knowing every micro-expression could be dissected and shared globally? These are the questions that make this story resonate beyond the celebrity sphere, highlighting themes of courage, poise, and strategic thinking under pressure. Witnesses also reported some surprising facts about the immediate aftermath. While the confrontation was brief, the ripple effect was enormous. Small groups gathered in corners, discussing what had occurred, speculating on causes, and debating the implications. Some conversations revolved around prior incidents involving Meghan, Leonardo, or Tom. Others focused on broader Hollywood dynamics, reflecting on hierarchy, influence, and the delicate art of social negotiation. These discussions, though seemingly minor, contributed to a network of knowledge and rumor that would eventually reach journalists, bloggers, and social media audiences. And yet, there were contradictions that only deepened the intrigue. Some celebrities insisted that Meghan handled the confrontation with elegance and strategic awareness, turning potential humiliation into a demonstration of strength. Others claimed the tension visibly unsettled her, revealing cracks beneath the polished exterior. Similarly, Leonardo's behavior was described alternately as principled, composed, or frustrated, while Tom's actions were labeled protective, assertive, or confrontational. The result was a tapestry of accounts, each highlighting different facets of the same event, leaving the public to navigate a sea of conflicting narratives. These eyewitness insights also revealed unexpected alliances. Some celebrities reportedly intervened subtly, attempting to mediate without drawing attention. Others supported one party through nods, shared glances, or quiet verbal reinforcement. Observers emphasized that these alliances were often unspoken, relying on body language, shared history, and an implicit understanding of Hollywood politics. It was a reminder that even in high-stakes confrontations, networks of support, loyalty, and strategy play a critical role, sometimes as decisive as the words spoken. Perhaps most fascinating was the way witnesses perceived the interplay of power, reputation, and strategy. Leonardo, Tom, and Meghan each brought decades of experience navigating public perception, private negotiation, and the complex social hierarchies of Hollywood. The confrontation was therefore not a simple exchange of words, but a multi-layered display of authority, restraint, and calculated response. Witnesses described it as a delicate dance, one that required precision, awareness, and timing, where a single misstep could have amplified consequences for all involved. Then came the final, shocking observation from several high-profile witnesses. The confrontation was far from over. While the public moment had concluded, private discussions, strategic exchanges, and subtle messaging continued behind the scenes. One source claimed that text messages, calls, and whispered directives were being exchanged immediately after the incident, creating a network of influence that would shape the story in the hours, days, and weeks that followed. This behind-the-scenes activity underscored the complexity of the encounter and demonstrated that what happens in public is only one layer of Hollywood's intricate social web. And as these witnesses recounted their experiences in interviews, articles, and private conversations, it became clear that the Governor Awards 2025 would be remembered not for trophies or performances, but for the interplay of personalities, reputations, and strategy. The confrontation, though brief, had ignited curiosity, speculation, and debate across Hollywood, social media, and beyond. And for those present, it was a moment that revealed the raw, unfiltered reality of celebrity dynamics. Power, pride, perception, and presence, all colliding in a glittering room where every action mattered. So the question for the audience is simple yet compelling. What would you have done if you were in that room? How would you navigate the gaze of two Hollywood legends confronting you publicly, while hundreds of others silently observed? The answer is part strategy, part psychology, and part emotional intelligence. A combination that only a few possess, and even fewer execute flawlessly under pressure. But while celebrity witnesses offered their perspectives, their accounts only fueled the next stage of the drama. Behind the cameras, in private rooms and hallways, discussions continued, decisions were made, and alliances were tested. The confrontation was far from resolved, and what these insiders knew, and what they observed, would soon shape the next explosive chapter of the Governor Awards 2025. Because even with the room temporarily settled, the story was only just beginning, and the next revelation would leave everyone stunned. Have you ever noticed how a single moment can ignite an entire media storm? One glance, one comment, one subtle gesture, and suddenly, the world is watching, dissecting, analyzing every detail. That was precisely what happened after the confrontation between Meghan Markle, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Tom Cruise at the Governor Awards 2025. What began as a tense, private interaction quickly escalated into a full-blown media spectacle, fueled by flashing cameras, eager journalists, and an insatiable public appetite for Hollywood drama. The paparazzi frenzy that followed would turn a single incident into an international talking point, and nothing could contain it. Immediately following the red carpet incident, photographers honed in on every movement. Flashes erupted in rapid succession, capturing Meghan's composed yet slightly tense posture, Leonardo's controlled gestures, and Tom's precise, deliberate stance. Every frame told a story, and the story quickly spread. Within minutes, social media accounts, fan pages, and news outlets were filled with images and video clips, each accompanied by speculation, commentary, and interpretation. Analysts would later point out that this was one of the fastest media escalations in recent Hollywood history, a testament to both the power of celebrity and the fascination the public has with perceived conflict. The frenzy was further amplified by the nature of social media itself. Platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok acted as instant amplifiers, where a single photo could go viral within minutes. Memes began circulating almost immediately. Leonardo's furrowed brow, Tom's commanding posture, Meghan's measured expression, each became fodder for analysis, humor, and debate. Fans and critics alike dissected every angle, every frame, speculating about motivations, emotions, and hidden meanings. What might have remained a subtle, backstage tension became a global conversation overnight. Journalists covering the Governor Awards also jumped on the story with remarkable speed. Entertainment reporters, accustomed to high-profile incidents, recognized the moment's potential to dominate headlines. Live broadcasts included expert commentary, clips from the red carpet, and interviews with other attendees who offered their perspectives. The narrative quickly framed Meghan as the focal point of the incident, while Leonardo and Tom were portrayed as figures enforcing boundaries, authority, and social etiquette. The story, though grounded in reality, was immediately dramatized, amplified, and sensationalized for maximum engagement. The emotional spikes created by the media coverage were profound. Fans of Meghan expressed outrage and sympathy, arguing that she had been unfairly targeted by Hollywood's elite. Others sided with Leonardo and Tom, praising their assertiveness and insistence on maintaining decorum. Comment sections, Twitter threads, and Instagram posts exploded with debate, often devolving into intense arguments about etiquette, personality, and celebrity influence. The incident, initially private and subtle, had now become a public spectacle of judgment, loyalty, and fascination. Interestingly, the paparazzi themselves played a strategic role in shaping the narrative. Multiple sources later revealed that some photographers anticipated a confrontation, positioning themselves in key locations to capture the first signs of tension. Others, reacting in real time, adjusted their angles, capturing expressions, gestures, and movements that told a story even before words were spoken. The result was a curated yet chaotic collection of media artifacts, each amplifying the drama for global consumption. What had been a tense interaction in a backstage corridor now had an audience numbering in the millions, both in person and online. But the media frenzy didn't stop at photos. Video clips circulated within minutes, some official, some leaked, some taken by attendees with smartphones. Analysts noted that the clips were dissected for microexpressions, body language, and subtle interactions. Every detail was scrutinized, a hand gesture here, a glance there, a slight smile or frown. Commentators offered multiple interpretations, highlighting how a single moment could carry multiple, often contradictory, meanings. One clip, for example, appeared to show Meghan smiling subtly at a camera, while insiders later revealed she was aware of Leonardo's remark and mentally preparing her response. These contradictions added layers to the story, making it more compelling and impossible for audiences to look away. The frenzy also fed on contrast and irony. Here were some of the world's most polished, calculated individuals, stars of film, philanthropy, and public life, caught in a moment of raw human tension. Cameras caught it, media amplified it, and audiences worldwide consumed it with voracious interest. The juxtaposition of Hollywood glamour with palpable conflict created a narrative that was irresistibly dramatic. This is why the incident dominated headlines for days. It was not just about celebrities, but about human behavior under pressure, made visible for millions to analyze. The social media amplification introduced a new layer of complication: interpretation. As clips and photos spread, narratives began forming independently of the facts. Hashtags emerged, each framing the incident in different lights, some sympathetic to Meghan, some praising Leonardo and Tom, some satirical, others analytical. This democratization of commentary, fueled by immediacy and emotion, created a multiplicity of narratives. Audiences could choose their perspective, and each perspective carried weight in shaping public discourse. The moment had become a cultural touchpoint, transcending the event itself. Meanwhile, mainstream media capitalized on the frenzy. Entertainment networks featured special segments dissecting the incident, often bringing in analysts, former stars, and etiquette experts. Each segment added context, speculation, and drama, drawing viewers deeper into the narrative. Headlines ranged from the sensational Hollywood shock, Meghan confronted by Leonardo and Tom, to analytical, the etiquette and power dynamics behind a red carpet confrontation. The combination of immediacy, analysis, and speculation ensured that the story remained at the forefront of public consciousness. Paparazzi, journalists, and social media commentators weren't the only ones contributing to the explosion. Fans themselves became active participants. Within hours, memes, GIFs, and short clips appeared across multiple platforms. Some highlighted Meghan's composure, others emphasized Leonardo and Tom's intensity. Audiences debated the motivations, implications, and potential consequences. The feedback loop created by social media ensured that the story evolved in real time, incorporating new interpretations and reactions with every passing minute. Amidst this frenzy, the emotional impact on the participants was significant. Sources reported that Meghan, while maintaining public composure, was aware of the growing scrutiny and the rapid spread of speculation. Leonardo and Tom, too, understood that their actions were now under a microscope, with millions forming judgments in real time. The pressure of public exposure, combined with the stakes of reputation, power, and influence, made the event far more consequential than any typical awards night interaction. The frenzy also revealed surprising contradictions. While the media portrayed Leonardo and Tom as dominant and assertive, some insiders noted moments of restraint and subtle diplomacy. Meghan's public composure was portrayed as strategic calm, yet she reportedly made private gestures that reflected both awareness and quiet defiance. These contrasts between public perception and private action fueled fascination, making audiences question what they were actually witnessing. Was this an outright confrontation, a strategic negotiation, or a complex dance of personalities navigating visibility, reputation, and human emotion? As the night continued, the paparazzi frenzy did more than capture images. It shaped the story. Viral moments, online commentary, and breaking news reports ensured that the incident transcended the immediate event. By the next morning, the world was debating what had happened, sharing clips, dissecting expressions, and speculating on consequences. The Governor Awards 2025, intended to celebrate talent and achievement, had become a case study in media amplification, celebrity dynamics, and the unpredictable power of social perception. And yet, for all the attention and analysis, the story was far from over. Behind the headlines, private conversations, strategic decisions, and personal reflections continued. Alliances were considered, reputations recalibrated, and plans made to navigate the fallout. The public frenzy was just the surface. Beneath it, the next chapters of this drama were already taking shape, promising more revelations, confrontations, and surprises in the days to come. Because in Hollywood, a single incident captured by cameras and magnified by media is never the whole story. And as the paparazzi frenzy and media explosion intensified, one thing became clear. The Governor Awards 2025 would be remembered not for trophies, performances, or speeches, but for the collision of power, perception, and human emotion that played out under the brightest lights. A drama captured, amplified, and scrutinized by the world. But what came next? Private conversations, insider revelations, and unseen maneuvering would escalate the story even further, and no one yet knew the full extent of the fallout. How do you respond when two of Hollywood's biggest icons confront you publicly, in front of cameras, fans, and thousands of unseen observers. That question haunted Meghan Markle in the moments following the red carpet confrontation at the Governor Awards 2025. The flashbulbs had not yet stopped popping. The social media storm was beginning to swell, and the whispers backstage were relentless. She faced a choice: respond impulsively, escalate the tension, or navigate the situation with calculated composure. And what she chose would define not just her night, but the narrative that would dominate headlines worldwide. Immediately after the confrontation, Meghan retreated briefly to a private area, a backstage room carefully arranged to give her both space and privacy. Mirrors reflected her poised image, but beneath the calm exterior, a storm of thoughts swirled. Staffers later recalled seeing her pause, exhaling slowly, eyes narrowing in focus. This was not just about handling a public moment. It was about understanding power dynamics, reading intent, and deciding the next move in a high-stakes social chess game. Every microexpression, every subtle gesture mattered because in Hollywood, control of perception is as crucial as talent itself. Her first reaction, according to insiders, was strategic observation. Meghan reportedly analyzed the room, noting who was nearby, who had witnessed the confrontation, and which individuals might carry her words, or their own interpretations, into the media frenzy outside. She was acutely aware that any reaction, no matter how private, could become public. This awareness, while imposing enormous pressure, also empowered her to act deliberately, controlling not only her emotional response but the broader narrative. Some sources claim that Meghan's initial internal response combined disbelief, mild frustration, and tactical calm. Disbelief, because few could have anticipated such a direct confrontation from Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Cruise, two figures she had respected and admired. Frustration, because the situation, while escalating from minor tensions, had become publicly humiliating. And tactical calm, because she recognized immediately that any visible emotional eruption could be weaponized by media, social media commentators, or Hollywood insiders. This intricate interplay of emotion and strategy showcased her ability to navigate a situation that many would find overwhelming. Yet Meghan did not remain passive. Staffers reported that she quickly considered multiple options for response: a measured verbal reply, subtle nonverbal communication, or even leaving the room momentarily to allow tempers to cool. In every potential action, she had to anticipate reactions, not just from Leonardo and Tom, but from witnesses, photographers, and eventually, a global audience watching through every possible lens. This high-pressure decision-making illustrates the unique skill set required to survive and even thrive under constant public scrutiny. When Meghan finally made her move, it was with deliberate poise. Witnesses noted a subtle, controlled smile, a nod, and a measured tone in her voice. Each gesture communicated awareness, acknowledgement, and self-possession. She didn't overreact, nor did she retreat entirely. Instead, she navigated the space with an elegance that both respected the confrontation and asserted her own dignity. In other words, she responded with a combination of emotional intelligence, strategic thinking, and public composure, qualities that would later be analyzed extensively by social media commentators, etiquette experts, and Hollywood insiders alike. The emotional beats in Meghan's reaction were striking.